Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is a Rymdkapsel, or Rymdkapsel, or any other way of pronouncing this thing. It's a little bit of a strange name, isn't it? A little bit of a strange-looking game as well, as I think you can probably tell in the background. That's a lot of blocks, that's a lot of colours, that looks like a puzzle game. And in some strange way, it kind of is. But it would be more accurately described as an abstract strategy game involving the construction of a space station. Reminds me quite a lot of a board game, actually. Not one specific board game, but the idea of an abstract concept board game where things and ideas and mechanics are represented by, say, various colored blocks, which is exactly what's going on here. It's made by these two people, Martin Jonsson and Nicholas Strom. Grapefrukt.com is the name of the company in question, so these guys are going out of their way to make it difficult for English speakers, which means we should, of course, hate them. This actually came out on Android and iOS before it came out on PC, and the PC version is, I wouldn't say inexplicably twice the price of the Android and iPad versions, even though it doesn't seem to have added any actual features, because this is very common practice. Annoyingly common practice. I wish they'd quit that. It's a little silly. So, having a look at the options menu, it's got sort of what you'd expect. Really, it's got screen scaling here, as you can see, which doesn't actually change the resolution, but it will fill the screen up entirely if you so desire. That seems like that should be default. I'm not really sure why this would be default, where it only uses less than half of the screen to actually render the game, which is a little bit weird. But it doesn't change the actual resolution. The resolution is whatever your native res is. So in this case, it's 1920 by 1080. You can go full screen on or off as well. So that would be useful for that. But you know what's nicer than having screen scaling? Actual resolution options. That's something that makes sense, as opposed to this, which is rather arbitrary. Then you got your tutorial messages on and off. Colorblind Mode, nice to see. Very important in a game like this, actually, because you will need to know what the colors of each room actually mean. And that's about it. Music playback on or off, no separate volume sliders whatsoever, so all things considered, a fairly poor options menu. Doesn't really have all that much to offer. Keys-wise, you won't need them, because the game is entirely mouse-driven, so that's that. Alright, let's get into it then, shall we? We're going to play one. I actually just got done with one of my playthroughs, which took over an hour. And we shall just begin and show you exactly what's going on with Rymdkapsel. So you've got three modes here. Normal, Plus, and Zen. That is Zen. And it is going to tell you exactly what Zen mode actually is. Most likely, it doesn't attack you. Indeed, there you go. It's really as simple as that. So there are no attacks in Zen mode. So you can build to your heart's content. And you can't get achievements, but there you go. So that's that. And then you've got Plus mode as well, which I'm not entirely sure what that does, so I'm going to find out momentarily. New Game Plus, alright. Which has actually brought up a different map, by the looks of it. Apparently I'm playing New Game Plus, but it didn't bother to tell me what that does. It may be that the abilities that I gained from the monoliths earlier do the job, and yeah, as it turns out, these monoliths here do different things, so it's a slight variant. We're going to play our game on normal, however, just to show you what's going on with it. Alright, welcome to Rymdkapsel. This is your tiny, tiny space station, and these are your tiny, tiny minions. And your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to not die. So let's begin, shall we, by constructing some corridors. So there are three resources in the game, outside of the actual minions themselves. There is particles, which are pink, energy, which is blue, and food, which is yellow. And they're represented by those little tokens right there. So the first thing we're going to do here is construct an extractor so that we can start to extract particles from these particle fields. Now, these are finite, so once they're done, they are absolutely done, and you can't mine any more of them. So you need to be a little bit careful with your construction, because everything, including the extractors, by the way, requires particles. Now, if you get into a situation where you need to build an extractor and you don't have any particles, you'll need to sell rooms, which is not good. So you need to plan ahead somewhat. Now, the aim of the game, as I said before, is to survive. You will be attacked frequently by all manner of nasty little beasties that will come at increasing rates throughout the game, up to, I think, wave 25 is as far as they will go there. I just realized that I have not constructed this all that well. There we go, we'll just pop that there. And we can pop the reactor on there, that should do the job. And the way to defend against them is by building weapons rooms, which will allow 2 of your minions to go into the weapons room, arm themselves with lasers, and attack, assuming that they happen to be in range. If you're not in a weapons room when the attack comes, chances are the minions outside are going to get horribly gunned down, and replacing those minions takes a little bit of effort. So it's really as simple as that. The game works via a fairly basic supply chain system. You need to build corridors in order to allow minions to get to various rooms, and you should be careful with your construction because efficiency does matter. You need the reactor to generate energy, you need gardens in the kitchen. The gardens create sludge, which is brought to the kitchen to make food. Food is required as a resource in order to build both new minions and other rooms. Really as simple as that. So what we want to do quite rapidly here is to expand as quickly as possible. And we actually can do that. But if we did, I think we would lose immediately, because we'd have no way of generating food. So the general way of doing things is to build an extractor first, so you're making particles, and then build a reactor so you're generating energy, and then build gardens in a kitchen, and then build quarters, which will generate 2 minions. And that means you can construct stuff faster, and you build your space station out from there. Now, you might notice there's a little bit of Tetris going on here. You would be absolutely correct. There most assuredly is. And it works fairly well, I'd have to say, for the most part. I'm going to put the kitchen there, so they're quite close together. That's good. Admittedly, what I have done there is blocked off a corridor, which is not that helpful. I'll be able to build it later once the particle field has been mined out, but that was pretty dumb. Never mind. But the Tetris mechanic is in there to, I suppose, make the design of the station unique every time and make it a little bit more difficult to create the optimal setup. So you got to be careful about the order in which you build things and plan a little bit ahead. Needless to say, since I'm terrible at puzzle games, that didn't work out so well for me, and I ended up having a sprawling station that looked absolutely terrible. Now, the bigger your station is, the harder it often is to move around, because your minions move very slowly. So you need to concern yourself with making the most efficient space station possible. Also, when you're under attack, they're going to have to go to the weapons room, so you're going to make sure there's a weapons room nearby, but you can't put them close together because there's kind of a zone of control for each of them, which prevents you from building too quickly and building too close together. So you got to make sure that you have a straight run there as quickly as possible. Stuff like the food supply chain, you got to make sure that the garden is next to the food, and then the stuff that will benefit from the food needs to be close to that as well. So overall, you need to design an efficient station and not die. And in the meantime, you also have 4 monoliths which spawn on the level. And in this mode, they always spawn in the same place. In New Game Plus, they spawn in a different place. And each of these will give you a benefit. That one makes your extractors more efficient. This slows the onslaught of enemies. This increases the range of weapons, and this increases the movement speed of your minions. They each require 3 minions to research, and they take forever to actually research. A long, long time. There's also an objective in the game to research all 4 within 45 minutes, which is kind of like, it's just an achievement, really. The game has a couple of arbitrary missions in play. Here you can see research all monoliths on normal, survive 28 waves on normal, research all monoliths in less than 45 minutes on normal. So that's kind of the reason to play the game. Those are your objectives. It's really as simple as that. And I say as simple as that because the game is quite simple. I'd like to say it's deceptively simple, but it's not, actually. It just really is quite a simple game, based around the idea of efficiency, building properly, not screwing things up, and not dying. There isn't really a lot else to it. Once you've designed your station, once you've got 2 reactors up, once you've got usually 2 kitchens and 2 gardens and enough quarters and a weapon station for each of the 2 minions, you're probably fine. And then you need to figure out if you can actually research these monoliths, because the attacks will come in increasing frequency. You'll probably notice this down the bottom here. Yes, indeed, that means that they are going to be coming at me. The first wave is always a harmless scout wave, so I don't actually need to worry about them right now. But I will need to do something eventually about that, because otherwise they'll come and murder all my minions and I will lose. Simple as that. Alright, we can actually build quarters now, but we don't have any energy. So I'll need to assign some of my minions down here. So you drag your minions to various different places, and then they will accomplish the task. You have no direct control over your minions outside of telling them what task to do. You can also prioritize building on 1 room at a time. So if you're building multiple rooms, you need one quicker than the other. That's the way to do it. But aside from that, you can't control your minions. And there's where one of the problems actually comes into play, because the AI is a little dumb, to say the least. And that is extremely problematic, because since your AI moves quite slowly and you are attacked at increasing frequency, you can very well lose thanks to the AI doing dumb things. One of the stupidest things that the AI does is it doesn't check whether or not resources are being taken to construct a room before actually picking up the resources. What does that mean? Well, the result of that is quite simply that you will end up having multiple minions taking resources to a single room even though they don't actually need those resources. That is pretty bad, and it can result in horrible failure and massive inefficiency. Now, some of the inefficiency you can control, because you know where the resources are on the map at any given time. You want to make sure that you build in a good position so that you don't screw things up. And that's fine, I get that. I get the idea that, yes, the game does involve a lot of forward planning. Admittedly, the forward planning does get screwed up horribly by the Tetris mechanic, which is a little bit counterintuitive, honestly. I like the idea because it's a little bit satisfying. It's a strange thing to put in a strategy game, but there's a degree of satisfaction to be had from flipping around the Tetris pieces. You see what the next 3 are going to be, and you try and pick the right ones as much as possible. But it does end up being counterintuitive to forward planning, as I said, because you have to sort of plan on the fly, which you wouldn't actually think the game would ask you to do, but it does. So it's a little bit of a weird mix of the two. Considering it's a game that requires efficiency and planning and all that kind of stuff, you would think that they would emphasize planning ahead as opposed to sort of planning on the fly. You might say, alright, well I need a building, but it's kind of the wrong shape. Well, I'm boned then, I guess I have to build a different building. It's a little odd, yeah? But I'll give them credit for originality in that respect. So the second wave is on its way. You see the bar down the bottom, it's going to gradually increase. And I will need a weapons room. I'm trying to get 4 minions out before that happens, so I'm building the quarters, which is the most expensive thing. And at that point, I'll need to supply it with food in order to make sure that I get 2 more minions, at which point I will then build a weapons room. And it really goes on like that. You continue expanding, you try and defend against the waves of enemies, which, you know, again, is not a particularly difficult thing to do, at least until later on in the game. And you try to get all 4 monoliths, and that's it. It's a bit zen, I think. It takes a long time to get things done because your minions move very slowly, and you don't have a way to increase the speed of the game. And that could be extremely frustrating for a lot of people. It actually got quite annoying for me, particularly in the mid-game, when I'm doing quite a lot of construction and things like that, and my station's got so large that it is just taking forever to get across the station in order to build. And you can negate that somewhat by careful planning, but there are times where it simply isn't going to happen for you, and you're just going to have to wait for your guys to move across. That becomes extremely annoying when your minions decide to all do something really inefficiently and take resources to the same place and then stand around like morons. It gets pretty annoying. And since you can only prioritize one thing at a time, you can end up in this extremely irritating situation. Yeah, we'll put it there. Where your minions are at the wrong side of the station because they've all wandered in one direction. Now they've got to wander all the way back. It can take several minutes sometimes to walk across a large space station. It gets pretty irritating. I do like the way that they have done this management down the bottom here. It's obviously designed for a smartphone, but it works pretty well with a mouse as well. Sort of dragging the minions between the various different tasks, and you get more tasks as you open up more rooms, as you might imagine there, is pretty fun. It's quite satisfying to move all of your minions over one way and just see them go about their business. And it works within the bounds of the game, considering that the game doesn't allow you to micromanage any of your minions. So it's a little bit of fairly inaccurate macro management. It might as well be a slider bar, really, let's be honest. The question is it any fun? Well, it's a bit relaxing at times, but it does get very, very stressful later on. So I would not, at any point, say that this game stays relaxing. It gets extremely stressful, because you can get horribly murdered very, very quickly. And you need to make sure that you don't mess up. I'll take that, and we'll put a weapons room. Guess we'll put it there. Yeah, that will work. There we go, so trying to keep this station as compact as possible at this stage. And we are going to be attacked in a second, so let's move some guys to defense. And these guys can go in construction. We don't actually have enough rooms, so this could be a bit of a problem. But we do have a fairly small station, so we should be able to defend, I think. There we go. So that's wave 1 done. Wave 2 is coming in a moment. And these guys will shoot them down automatically. There doesn't seem like there's a huge amount of strategy to the placement of these because, honestly, it limits you with this sort of area of effect. So you can't place them too close together to really cover each other. It can be a little bit annoying. Alright, where are the enemies coming from? Where are they? There's only one enemy. It's coming from this direction. That's bad news. Because it's probably going to kill this minion here. We're going to switch them both over to food service to make them turn around. Nope, that just made them lie in the middle of the road, which is no use whatsoever. And now they're going to die. Which is lovely. Yeah. Pretty much my own fault. Because I didn't build things quick enough, but it's a little annoying nonetheless. As someone that loves to play strategy games, just watching my minions lie around and get shot is fairly infuriating. I know that's the way the game's designed, but it's not the kind of thing that I personally enjoy doing. The game just seems to... I mean, it's deliberately minimalistic, isn't it? So, you can't really argue that... Well, of course you can. It's just like, well, it seems to be lacking in stuff, and then you're going to say, oh, well, it's deliberately minimalistic. It's like, I understand that it is deliberately minimalistic, but... However, you know, perhaps a rather important point, just because you built your game to be deliberately minimalistic doesn't mean that you cannot criticize it for lacking in game mechanics and depth. And mechanically, it does lack depth. I think that's abundantly clear. There's not really a huge amount you can do. It seems like there is one way to solve this game, from what I can tell. One way. And they do shuffle it up a little bit thanks to this Tetris building mechanic, but there is still one way to solve the game. You need 2 reactors. You need, from what I can tell, 2 gardens and 2 kitchens. You need a weapons room for every 2 of these dudes, and then you've got a finite number of particles that you can actually mine, so you can't go ludicrous with the number of minions that you've got. So, it seems like it's solvable, which actually makes it less of a strategy game and more of a puzzle game, in my honest opinion. The opponents don't have any AI to speak of, and defending against them really consists of just, well, running to the weapons room and making sure you do that quick enough that you don't lose any minions, but you don't do it too soon, because then you will lose out on research time for these monoliths. And it seems like you could figure out exactly how to do it, and then execute it from a guide, which is probably not what people are looking for from a strategy game, I would think. So it's very limited in what it does. It does what it does fairly well, for the most part. I actually quite like the abstract style of the graphics there. It's not ugly. I wouldn't say it's pretty, but it's clean. I do have a couple of minor issues, minor gripes kind of with the UI. The fact that this is over the top of the screen all the time. There's actually a lot of screen real estate that's taken up by this interface, which I don't think is necessary. And once you start to get a lot of different minions, well, I say a lot of different minions, they're all the same, but once you get a lot of minions, what you'll end up finding is that you can't really keep track of just how many you have, because you have to try and count each one of them, which can be difficult, especially when a lot of them are carrying resources when they're doing construction and things like that. It would just be nice to have numbers. I guess from an art style standpoint, they didn't want that to happen. They wanted everything to be very abstract and symbols to represent everything, but this would be much easier if it just said 4 instead of this mess, which is 4 with a bunch of shapes overlapping. And I think that it actually sacrifices usability in favor of looking fancy, which is not acceptable, in my honest opinion. You're going to see the AI being dumb here, by the way, so they're both going to go to the same room even though only 1 particle is required. Oh, never mind, I'm actually a dumbass, 2 were required, but it will happen regardless. Alright, let's get to defense once again. It does happen. The AI will take too many resources to one room, and then once it's complete, we'll sort of turn around, stand around for a minute, and then try and take it to somewhere else, which can often mean the other side of the space station. I just don't really think there's enough here to keep me interested, particularly later on in the game, say around wave 10 or whatever. Things really, really drag on, and it takes forever to actually build things. And once you're building stuff, and once you've got everything set up, and you've got a good number of minions, the only management that's really required is sending them between these 4 different roles. There's, I think, 5 in total, because research is added once you've connected your station to these monoliths, but outside of that, there's not really a lot going on. And I think that was the aim of the game, because the whole thing seems to be rather zen. Even the music gives that indication. But I'm looking for a little bit more from a space strategy or whatever. Heck, even the description of the game on Steam is fairly lackluster. It just says, hey, build a space station, explore the universe. Like, well, there's no real exploration of the universe involved. The map is always the same every time on normal mode. The plus mode is a bit different. So, you're not really exploring the universe or anything along those lines. I'm going to sell this now because I actually don't need it, because it is mined out. So, no need to do that. Get a couple more minions up and head towards this. If you are the kind of person that enjoys min-maxing, then I think this will be a game that you will enjoy. It will also get a bit annoying for you because you'll want to min-max and micromanage everything, but the game just stubbornly refuses to allow you to properly micro anything. It's really more of the macro in the case of send minion to do this job, and it will do whatever it kind of sees fit to do in the meantime, which can be fairly annoying. But you do need to min-max and do things absolutely correctly in order to complete all the objectives. Getting all the monoliths in 45 minutes seems very difficult to me. It would take a good amount of work to do that. And if you're the kind of person that enjoys that level of challenge and enjoys playing the same game multiple times to gradually and iteratively get better at it, then yeah, I can definitely see the appeal there for you. Absolutely. However, if you're looking for an actual strategy game, rather than what is basically a veiled puzzle game, and you're looking for some mechanical depth, there isn't any. You know? It is very stripped down. It is very Spartan in terms of its mechanics, which is okay for some people. And consider that it was originally designed as a mobile game. Although it's a very strange choice for a mobile game, because these games can take upwards of an hour to beat, and more often than not, you're holding the thing and not doing anything. Right, there are several minutes at a time where you just don't touch the controls, which is, again, a bit of an odd choice for a mobile game, because those games are often designed around the idea of 1 to 2 minutes of frantic activity, and then maybe put it down and come back to it in a day or whatever. It doesn't really work with games that run for over an hour, and yet you're not constantly engaged by them. So that's a little bit odd, I've got to say. I personally, if I was confronted with the notion of paying $8 for this, for me, $8 is not a lot, but I have not had a massive amount of fun playing it. There have been moments where things have really ticked and I'm building at a fast rate, and I'd be building faster if I was actually focusing on the game and not talking, you know how it goes, but... And that could be fun, don't get me wrong. And there are those moments. They do happen. They definitely exist. But... oh, hell. They're kind of few and far between, and the rest of it is just too slow-paced and too shallow in terms of its mechanics for me to be engaged for a lengthy period of time. And as a result, I haven't really had the desire to play it multiple times and go back and try to do better, because there's just not enough complexity there. I don't feel that you're really becoming skillful at the game, you're just kind of learning from your mistakes and becoming just a little better at efficiently designing your space station. And some people will enjoy that. Yeah, absolutely. For me, though, it's just a little too tame. There's not enough going on to keep me engaged, but you are talking about someone that plays StarCraft 2, which, you know, is an incredibly frantic title. The funny thing about this is I think it would work very well as a board game. A cooperative board game. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. And it almost is, but obviously played in real time. It certainly utilizes principles from board games. I think that is obvious. And they work fairly well, but again, for me, it's a bit too slow-paced, it's a little bit too tame, and it doesn't really have enough going on for it. And I felt just too much frustration at what the AI did and the lack of control that you have in this game. Maybe I'm just a control freak, maybe that's what it is. But I felt like I needed to be more in control and not have the AI do ridiculous dumb things that got me killed. My last playthrough, I lost a bunch of dudes because of the AI basically massing up and going to build one thing at the other side of the station, and taking a bunch of resources it didn't need, getting stuck out in the middle of the open, and then getting gunned down because the next wave of aliens came in. And you can actually get to a point, especially towards the waves, like 20 waves in, that if you lose a few minions, you might as well just give up the game at that point, because you're dead. You are absolutely, completely boned. You will not have enough minions, you will not have enough time to replenish the minions, and so on and so forth. But there you go, folks. Rymdkapsel is available for $8 on Steam or your regional equivalent. You can get it for half that price on a mobile device, if you so desire. It may be a game that you may enjoy, which is possibly one of the dumbest things you can ever say if you do any kind of critical content. Someone might like it. It's like, yes, you will like it if you prefer the more laid-back approach, where you don't have direct control. Yeah, you're influencing what the minions do. You're not necessarily controlling them directly. Not for me, though. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.